The champagne tastes flat the second Claire Forbes spots the necklace. The banner over the stage reads Forbes Foundation Innovation Gala, the same last name that used to be printed on the gates of the mansion she cannot step into anymore. A shrill laugh cuts through the music. Oh, look who sneaked in here. Claire's shoulders tense. She knows that voice. Two socialites trail behind her, hungry for gossip. Lillian's lips curl when she reaches Claire. Isn't this the girl who sells idea sketches at street markets? Lillian tilts her head, pretending to search for the right word. What do you call it again? One of the girls beside her snickers. Did she sneak in with the catering staff? Claire keeps her chin level. I was invited. By who? Lillian lets out an exaggerated gasp. Wait, I remember now. You are that crazy girl who tried to claim she is the real Forbes heiress, right? She taps her forehead as if the memory only just returns. You even showed up at the old mansion 3 years ago. The memory is a bruise that never healed. Rain, cold stone steps, the heavy iron gate between her, and the only home she remembered. A girl in a white dress standing on the porch, clutching a necklace in her hand. Lillian. Wearing Claire's life like an evening gown. You might want to lower your voice. Why? Lillian leans closer, perfume sharp and cloying. Afraid people will hear the truth. It is then that Claire sees it, resting against Lillian's collarbone, catching the ballroom lights. The Forbes crest. Her crest. For a second, the room tilts. The hum of conversation fades, replaced by the roar of blood in Claire's ears. She remembers that necklace pressed into her tiny palm, her father's voice gentle. As long as you keep it, you will always find your way home. Her home burned down on a wet highway the night their car spun out of control. The necklace was ripped from her neck in the crash. She woke in a stranger's apartment with bandages and a broken life. Arnold, the old chauffeur who pulled her out of the wreck, raised her on the other side of the city, and told her the truth when she was old enough to understand. The Forbes heiress. Now the stolen pendant gleams inches from Claire's face. One of Lillian's followers steps forward, lips twisted. Do you even own a real pair of heels? Move, you are blocking the view. Her glass sloshes. Do not touch me. Claire's voice is quiet, but sharp as broken glass. She sets the champagne on the nearest tray and straightens, eyes locked on Lillian's. And take your hand off me. Claire nods at the necklace. Also, you are wearing that wrong. Lillian blinks, as if she misheard. What did you just say? That necklace. Her heart hammers, but her voice stays calm. It does not belong to you. Color drains from Lillian's face for a fraction of a second before she recovers. Then she laughs, high and ugly. You really never get tired of this little delusion, do you? This crest is on the family's stationery, the gates, the foundation logo. Anyone can copy it on cheap jewelry if they want. It is not just the crest. Claire's gaze does not move. There is an inner mark you do not know about. Her smile wavers. You are crazy. A few guests nearby pause their conversations to watch. Phones lift, subtle but present. The scent of scandal spreads faster than any perfume. Get her out of here. She is harassing me. 2 men in dark suits begin to move through the crowd. The girls behind Lillian smirk, one of them stepping as if to push Claire again. Claire's fingers curl into fists at her sides, tired of swallowing rage, because she had nothing but her word and a faded memory. Tonight, she came armed with more than that. Investors, contracts, a plan. Her eyes lift, not to the guards, but to the stage where a row of executives is gathering for the next presentation. Among them stands a tall man in a charcoal suit, watching the scene with hooded gray eyes. Ian Hart, heir to the Hart conglomerate, the youngest member of the city's most ruthless corporate dynasty. His gaze meets hers, steady and curious. One guard reaches for Claire's arm. Touch her and you are fired. The words slice through the room like a blade. The guards stop mid-step, heads swivel. Ian Hart is no longer on stage. Lillian's smile stiffens. Ian, what a surprise. She lets out a light laugh that sounds strained. This girl is making a scene. I was just asking them to remove her. His eyes stay on Claire, measuring, assessing. Is that true? He asks quietly. Claire lifts her chin. I was invited to present my startup tonight. Lillian's date shifts uncomfortably. Several onlookers exchange glances. Ian turns to the guards. She is my guest. He takes a step closer to Claire, positioning himself between her and the security detail with casual finality. The guards glance at each other and back away. A murmur ripples through the crowd. Partner. Lillian's face goes slack, then twists. Since when do you partner with street vendors? She is using you. Ian finally looks at Lillian. The warmth in his eyes disappears. since she built a product smart enough to earn a meeting on my calendar. His tone is calm, but the message is unmistakable. From what I have seen, they are not as impressive as your social media presence. A few people cough to hide their laughter. Someone actually snorts. Lillian's mask cracks. You have no right to talk to me like that. I am one of Forbes Group's largest outside investors. That lands like a punch. Lillian jerks as if struck. Claire files that piece of information away, the corner of her mind that never stops strategizing, already moving pieces on an invisible board. Ian turns back to Claire, his voice dropping so only she can hear. Her throat feels tight, but not from fear. From a strange, sharp mix of humiliation and something that tastes like hope. I will be once I finish what I came here to do. Good. The corner of his mouth lifts, barely there. Try not to have anyone thrown out before then. Despite herself, Claire huffs out a laugh. No promises. Ian's gaze flicks to the necklace again, then to the thin chain hidden beneath the neckline of Claire's dress, where her own secret pendant rests against her skin. His eyes narrow thoughtfully before he turns away. When she looks at Claire again, her eyes are full of wildfire. This is not over. She whispers, low and vicious. You think you can show up at my party, in my family's house, and humiliate me in front of Ian Hart. I will make sure you regret ever stepping into this ballroom. Claire meets that hatred with a cool, steady stare. This is not over. Not by a long shot. As the orchestra starts a new song and waiters swirl past with silver trays, Claire feels something deep inside her settle into place. For years, she chased scraps of proof, knocking on closed doors, while the world treated her like a crazy girl with a fairy tale. Tonight, in front of the entire city, Lillian flaunts the stolen crest on her throat. If Lillian insists on wearing Claire's life around her neck, then Claire will rip it back link by link, until there is nothing left of the imposter but exposed lies and a ruined reputation. The real Forbes heiress did not come here to beg. She came to take everything back. The meeting room behind the ballroom smells like old money and new fear. Floor-to-ceiling windows show Manhattan glittering beyond the glass, but the real stars sit around the long mahogany table, each with a nameplate that could move markets. Her startup's logo glows on the tablet in front of her, a little blue spark in a sea of industry giants. Relax, murmurs Tom, the angel investor who took a chance on her prototype 6 months ago. It is just a room full of people who think they own the world. Comforting, Claire says dryly. At the head of the table, the current acting chairman of Forbes Group clears his throat. As you know, our group is exploring strategic partnerships for the next decade. We will begin with Project Horizon. Claire's pulse jumps. Project Horizon. The file she spent half the night reading after Tom forwarded the invite. Representing Forbes Group. The chairman continues. Is our family's heiress, Lillian Forbes. Mason, Claire corrects automatically in her head. Lillian Mason, wearing Claire's surname like a stolen coat. Lillian swans into the room with a smile that does not reach her eyes. Her silver gown has been swapped for a tailored white suit, all clean lines and confidence. For exactly 10 seconds, one of the executives from a European firm leans forward. Miss Forbes, our board is very interested in how your team plans to manage the projected spike in energy costs by year 3. Could you elaborate on the hedging strategy outlined on page 12? Page 12 is dense with numbers, but the pattern is obvious once you know where to look. Her father used to make her explain this sort of thing at the dinner table like a game. Lillian hesitates almost imperceptibly. Of course, she says. As you can see, we have a very robust approach planned. The executive waits. Specifically, how will you address the risk of regulatory changes? The document suggests you expect a price cap in year 2. Lillian's smile flickers. Well, as you know, regulations are always changing. So your strategy is to watch? Another investor raises an eyebrow. Color rises in Lillian's cheeks. She shuffles the papers, clearly searching for a script that is not there. We will work closely with our advisors to adjust as needed. Someone sighs. The chairman's jaw tightens. If you do not understand your numbers, someone else will use them to eat you alive. The European executive closes his folder. Forgive my bluntness, but we are not interested in vague assurances. This is a multi-billion-dollar project. We need to know the leadership understands its own models. When she looks at him, he gives the tiniest nod. Now, excuse me, Claire says before she can overthink it. May I add something? Every head at the table turns in her direction. Lillian stiffens. This is a Forbes internal project. She snaps. It is not your place to. If Miss Forbes is not prepared to discuss the numbers. The European executive interrupts coolly. I would be interested to hear from someone who is. Silence stretches. Go ahead, Ms. Claire, she says. Instead, she keeps it simple. Claire Forbes is fine. Lillian makes a strangled noise. Claire stands, tablet in hand. Her stomach somersaults, but once the figures are in front of her, everything else falls away. It is like sliding into a language she grew up speaking. The price cap in year 2 is optimistic, she says. If the legislation in committee passes in its current form, the cap will not hit until at least year 3. If we lock in long-term contracts the way this document suggests, we will bleed cash in year 2 for no reason. One of the American investors leans forward. Claire taps a few keys. The screen on the wall behind the chairman lights up, mirroring her tablet as if the system obeys her alone. She moves through the model, adjusting, explaining. Spread the hedge, delay the cap assumption, redirect capital to storage solutions that will pay off in 5 years instead of 3. The words come smooth and steady. By year 5, Claire concludes. You reach the same revenue target with 30% lower risk exposure, and you do it without betting the entire company on a political schedule you cannot control. Silence again, but this time the room feels electric. Then someone whistles softly. Impressive. Another asks. Tom clears his throat. At the moment, she works for herself. But my fund led her seed round. We specialize in data-driven ventures. Ian's voice joins the conversation from the far end of the table. Claire had not even noticed him slip into the room. Which is exactly the kind of thinking this project needs. He says. We can either pretend this is fine, or we can admit we have been resting on nostalgia instead of innovation. The chairman bristles. That hushes the room. But he would not want his legacy used as a shield for bad math. Claire's chest tightens. Her father. They are talking about her father, but not a single person here knows that except Tom and, apparently, Ian Hart. Miss Claire, if your model is accurate, my board would like to see a formal proposal on a partnership. Perhaps your startup could consult on Project Horizon. Lillian slams her folder shut. You cannot be serious. And nobody. I am the one running Forbes Group. You are the one who could not answer a basic question about your own flagship project. Someone mutters. Lillian rounds on Claire. You stole those models. Her voice climbs higher with every word. You probably broke into our servers and copied confidential files. The chairman pales. Lillian, that is enough. No, it is not enough. You show up at my gala, you embarrass me in front of half the city, and now you are trying to sabotage our negotiations. Claire closes her tablet slowly. These models were built by my father. He used to run these numbers with me for fun when I was 10. Her gaze sweeps the room. You renamed it, but the skeleton is the same. A ripple of surprise moves through the executives. Some of them are old enough to remember a little girl sitting in the corner of the boardroom, swinging her feet, while her father explained risk curves. Lillian's mask slips. Your father? He was the original CEO of Forbes Group. Claire's fingers tighten around the tablet. The one who died in the crash that mysteriously produced a grieving heiress, who does not know the difference between a hedge and a hole in the ground. Gasps. Someone drops a pen. Get her out of here right now. No one moves. Every eye in the room is waiting, watching the chairman, not Lillian. His face has gone gray. He looks, for the first time, like a man who is very tired. We will review the models and reconvene. For now, I think this meeting is adjourned. Chairs scrape back. People stand, cluster, whisper. Tom leans close to Claire. I know. Her voice shakes. The adrenaline is wearing off, leaving a hollow ache in its wake. I could not keep my mouth shut. Do not apologize. Tom says. Across the room, Ian catches her eye. His expression is unreadable, but he lifts his glass in a small, private salute before slipping out the side door. Lillian storms past, shoulder-checking Claire hard enough to make her stumble. You are finished. She hisses. Whatever little life you have built for yourself, I will tear it apart. Claire steadies herself. For a moment, the old instinct whispers at the back of her mind. Back away. Survive. Do not pick fights you cannot win. She thinks of the necklace around Lillian's throat and the matching imprint against her own skin. I already survived losing everything once. She says quietly. You have no idea what I am willing to do to keep you from stealing it again. Lillian scoffs and stalks out, but there is a tremor in her steps. Tom watches her go. Let her. Claire exhales slowly, the city lights blurring outside the glass. This time, I am ready. Claire's studio smells like coffee, solder, and the faint ghost of panic. Half the lamps are shattered. Broken glass glittering on the concrete looks almost pretty if she squints, like a constellation scattered at her feet. The police already came and went, their sympathy professional and thin. Vandalism, they called it. Probably kids. File a report. Call your insurance, ma'am. Kids do not spray paint the word liar across your door in the same sick shade of lipstick Lillian favors. Claire sweeps the shards into a pile, each scrape of the broom dragging against raw nerves. Her laptop is a twisted ruin on the desk. They were careful, whoever did this. Careful to leave the cheap backup machines untouched and destroy the drives that hold her live data feeds and predictive models. Her phone buzzes on the counter. Arnold's name flashes on the screen. She presses answer and forces her voice to steady. Arnold. I saw the news. They are saying your company is a fraud. That you lied to investors. Of course the rumors hit the net already. Grainy photos of smashed monitors. Captions accusing her of faking her numbers to get into Forbes' inner circle. Anonymous accounts suggesting she stole proprietary data. It is bad. Claire admits. They destroyed almost everything. There is a long silence. When Arnold speaks again, his tone is careful. Do you want me there tonight? Arnold is home, the only anchor in a life that keeps shifting under her feet. But his heart is not what it used to be, and the last time he climbed her stairs he had to sit down halfway. I will be okay, she says. The police think it is just vandalism. The police also thought your parents' crash was an accident. He grumbles. She smiles despite everything. I will change the locks and set up new cameras. I promise. His sigh rasps through the line. You should not have to fight this alone. The image of Ian's cool gray eyes flashes through her mind. The way he stepped between her and the guards. The way he looked at her in the boardroom like he could see straight through the mess. I have investors. Friends. Friends with lawyers, I hope. Arnold mutters. The rich do not like their stories questioned. I know. She swallows. I will call you in the morning, okay? Okay. And Claire? Your father would be proud of you. The line clicks dead. Claire presses the phone to her forehead for a moment, letting the words settle. Then she takes a picture of the wreckage for her insurance claim and goes back to sweeping. She freezes, hands stilling on the broom handle. No one visits her unannounced. Who is it? She calls, heart in her throat. Ian Hart. I brought coffee. And maybe a lawyer. Claire stares at the door. Why would you bring a lawyer? Because a certain heiress started making very loud accusations about you in rooms full of journalists. He replies. She bites back a hysterical laugh. If this is some twisted trap, it is a strangely elaborate one. She unlatches the chain and opens the door. Ian stands in the hallway in a dark coat, rain speckling his hair. He holds a cardboard tray with 2 coffees and a folder tucked under his arm. This is Nora, Ian says as he steps inside. She runs my in-house legal team. Try not to scare her. She bites. Nora does not look up. Then she glances around and whistles softly. Wow, they really went to town on you. You saw the pictures online, Claire says dully. It is even better in person. I would say I am sorry, but that feels inadequate. Sorry does not magically reconstruct hard drives. She says. But I will take the caffeine. They stand in the doorway of what used to be her office, while Nora walks through the studio, snapping photos and muttering about evidence chains. Ian's gaze lingers on the smashed screens, the toppled whiteboards, the jagged letters on the door. Subtle. He says. It is Lillian's style. Claire replies. Loud, messy, and expensive. She is panicking. Ian steps closer, lowering his voice. She is not used to that. Claire wraps her hands around the coffee cup, drawing heat into her fingers. She is used to stealing what she wants and getting away with it. There is a flicker in Ian's eyes at that. She is not going to get away with this. We already pulled some security footage from nearby businesses. Our team has more reach than the average officer on the beat. You what? Claire blinks. Why? And because I do not believe in coincidences. Your studio is trashed hours after that boardroom scene, and her father's shell companies bought up shares in a competitor last quarter. Patterns like that make me itchy. Nora returns, sliding her tablet into her bag. We have enough to file a civil suit. She announces. Whoever. Claire echoes. Nora smiles, small and sharp. Lillian is not as careful as she thinks. Money leaves a trail, even when you try to launder it through friends of friends. Claire's knees feel weak. She sinks onto a half-intact chair. You did all that since the gala. We started 5 minutes after she called you a thief in front of half the city. Ian says. By the time the rumors hit the net, my team already had screenshots and backup copies of her accusations. Inside are printed photos, transaction charts, and at the bottom, a glossy still frame from a grainy video. It shows two men in hoodies kicking in her door. The timestamp reads 3 hours after the gala. The logo on the truck parked outside is barely visible, but Nora has circled it in red. This is admissible, Nora says. They always do. Claire stares at the evidence, something hot and wild swelling in her chest. Not just anger, vindication. For so long, she had nothing but a story people dismissed as trauma-fueled fantasy. Why are you doing this? She asks, voice rough. You barely know me. Ian leans against the edge of the desk, arms folding. I know enough. He considers her for a long moment. Fine. Full answer, then. 1. I do not like bullies. 2. My father respected your father more than any of the men currently squabbling over his company. Claire swallows. You think that person is me? I think you are the only one in that boardroom who knew what you were talking about yesterday, he says. And I think whoever you are, you deserve better than this. He nods toward the broken equipment. He hesitates, then smiles, the expression softer than she has ever seen on his face. I like you. You are infuriating, reckless, and absolutely incapable of keeping quiet when you see bad math. Her face heats. You realize helping me puts you directly in Lillian's crosshairs. I have lived in her crosshairs for years, he says. Her parents spent decades trying to pry equity out of my family. This is just a new angle. If we are done flirting, we should also discuss the necklace. Claire startles. What about it? Ian's gaze drops briefly to her collarbone. Lillian's pendant and yours are not identical, he says. Hers has the main crest, but something was missing. Claire reaches under her shirt and pulls out a small gold disc on a chain. It is simple, worn smooth at the edges from years of being thumbed like a talisman. On the back, barely visible unless you know what you are looking for, is a tiny second crest, etched inside the first like a hidden lock. There is a micro-engraving, she says quietly. Ian's eyes meet Nora's. Lillian has the outer charm, he says. Stolen, we can assume. Which means, Nora finishes, that your pendant is the one that proves lineage. Combined with a DNA test and Arnold's testimony, it is almost airtight. You believe me? I believe the evidence, Nora says. And the evidence is on your side. Lillian's whole identity is one forged necklace away from collapse. Ian pushes himself off the desk. First, we stop her from destroying your livelihood. Then we go after the bigger lie. Claire looks at the ruined studio, at the folder of proof, at the man who walked into her disaster with coffee and a war plan. The rage that has been eating her alive for years shifts, gaining shape. It is not just anger anymore. All right, she says. Let us burn her story down. The Fire Forbes Group's anniversary gala is less a party and more a coronation rehearsal. Strings play on the balcony, cameras flash, and the city's most powerful people drift through the marble hall like orbiting satellites. Everywhere, banners celebrate 50 years of Forbes innovation. The pendant under her collarbone feels heavier than usual tonight. You still have time to back out, Tom murmurs beside her. Once this starts, there is no going back. There was no going back the moment Lillian smashed my studio, she replies. Tonight we stop letting her write the script. At her side stands a tall man with slicked back hair, and the smirk of someone too used to headlines. The screen behind them flashes his face in a slideshow of magazine covers. Property tycoon, philanthropist, serial heartbreaker. That is not a husband, Claire says. That is camouflage. Ian steps up on Claire's other side, perfectly on time. Tonight his suit is midnight black, his tie a dark silver that catches the light when he moves. He nods to Tom, then leans in just enough for Claire to hear. Nora is with Arnold backstage. Is he all right? Claire's chest tightens. Bringing Arnold here was the riskiest part of the plan. Stubborn, annoyed, and complaining about the champagne selection, Ian says. On stage, the acting chairman raises a hand for quiet. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us as we celebrate 50 years of leadership. Tonight, we also have a personal announcement. Lillian steps forward, smile dazzling and utterly false. As many of you know, the past few years have been difficult for my family, she says, voice trembling in a practiced way. And now, we are ready for the next chapter. She threads her arm through the tycoons. Tonight, I am honored to share that I will be joining our legacy with that of the Carter family through marriage. Applause bursts from the crowd. Champagne glasses clink. The image of Forbes and Carter united sends ripples through every corner of the market. Claire watches the flashbulbs bounce off Lillian's necklace. The stolen crest gleams under the lights like a dare. Ready? Ian asks under his breath. She wrote every word of her statement with Arnold, each syllable a blade. Ready. The chairman spreads his arms. Tonight is about more than the past. He declares. It is about the future we build together. Claire's voice cuts through the amplified smoothness like a shard of ice. The microphones on stage pick it up. Heads turn. For a moment, the entire ballroom seems to inhale. Claire steps out of the shadow and into the spill of light, heart beating a staccato against her ribs. I thought we were celebrating truth tonight. Security. The chairman snaps automatically. Remove her. Stand down. Ian's voice says at the same time, calm but iron hard. A second later, the company's chief of security hesitates, phone pressed to his ear. His family owns one of the biggest chunks of Forbes stock on the exchange. They do not move against him lightly. Who let you in here? Lillian demands, composure cracking. This is a private event. She looks out over the crowd, at the faces that watched her be dragged from those gates years ago. Maybe more. Someone laughs uncertainly, thinking this is a stunt. Someone else lifts a phone, recording. Social media will decide what this is before the night is over. She has the words memorized. She has been reciting them in her head since she learned how to pronounce the word imposter. My name is Claire Forbes, she says. The name lands in the air with the weight of a gavel. I am the biological daughter of the late CEO Richard Forbes. Gasps, murmurs. Lillian goes very still. This is insane. The chairman mutters. Who gave her a microphone? Ian lifts his phone, thumb moving. A second later, the sound system shrieks with feedback, then quiets. When Claire speaks again, her voice comes through the main speakers as clear as the strings on the balcony. Ian hacked the soundboard. Of course he did. He shielded me from the fire, from the press, and from the people standing on this stage. The doors at the side of the hall open. A hush falls as an older man in a dark suit steps through, moving with the stiff gait of someone whose body has been stitched back together too many times. Arnold. The scars along his jaw catch the light like silver threads. I thought he was dead. Many things we thought were dead are simply waiting. Arnold says as he takes the small staircase up to the stage. His voice is rough, but every word carries. Like truth. Lillian recoils as he approaches. Her smile is gone now, replaced by raw panic. You signed a severance agreement. You were paid to disappear. I did disappear. Arnold says. Because I knew if your parents realized the girl they pushed into their dead employer's life survived, they would do whatever it took to remove her again. Even the strings on the balcony falter. Arnold turns to the crowd. I pulled 2 people from that burning car the night of the crash. He says. Richard Forbes died before the ambulance arrived. His daughter did not. I went back for it, but by then the fire had melted the metal into the seatbelt. When I came to the house to tell them she lived, I found this girl. He gestures to Lillian. Wearing a brand new copy around her neck. No. Lillian breathes. Your parents offered me money to vanish. Arnold continues. They lied to the board, to the press, and to their own employers. They presented their daughter as his, using a stolen crest and forged documents. They said Claire died so they could slide their child into her place. This is slander. The chairman snaps, but there is sweat beading at his temples. In these files, you will find the original police report, the hospital records, and the audio recording of the conversation, where they offered to pay me for my silence. I kept everything. Claire watches the crowd's faces shift as the past they thought they knew phrase at the edges. Some look horrified, some skeptical, some calculating. The tycoon beside Lillian has gone pale, his hand slipping from her waist as if she suddenly burns. Claire steps up onto the stage, knees almost buckling. Arnold holds out his hand. Resting in his palm is the small gold disc she has worn on a chain under her clothes for as long as she can remember. Tonight, for the first time, she lets the world see the back of it. The cameras zoom in as Nora's team pushes the close-up to the screens. Only Richard's direct child received this engraving. Arnold says. There is one pendant and one only. I checked the mold myself. From the other side of the stage, Ian speaks into a handheld mic he somehow acquired. We also have a DNA test. He says. The results match the Forbes family line. The samples were taken under supervision. If anyone would like to contest their validity, I will happily walk you through the chain of custody. Nora appears at the foot of the stage with a briefcase, flanked by 2 very serious-looking people in suits. She pops it open with a click. Witness statements. Financial records tying the Mason family to a decade of quiet siphoning from Forbes accounts. The room erupts. Reporters shove forward. Board members shout over one another. This is a setup. Lillian shrieks, voice cracking. They are lying. They faked those tests. They hacked our computers. Enough. He looks at Claire, at Arnold, at the pendant gleaming under the lights. For the first time, he does not look at Lillian at all. We will recess this event while the board reviews these. They are not accusations. Nora says. They are facts. But by all means, take your time. We already filed copies with the regulators. Security steps forward, not toward Claire, but toward Lillian. Lillian stares at them, at the cameras, at the guests who are already edging away from her. You cannot do this. She whispers. This is my life. No. Claire says quietly, so only Lillian can hear. It was mine. With interest. For a second, Lillian's eyes fill with something almost like the terrified little girl she might have been once, before greed wrapped around her like a second skin. Then her expression hardens into something uglier. You will regret this. She spits. You think they will love you? Maybe. Claire says. But at least they will be eating the right person. As security escorts Lillian, and the shaken Mason parents toward a side exit, cameras swarm. The queen they thought they crowned has been revealed as an actress in stolen jewelry. Now the real heir stands center stage, not with a dramatic speech, but with numbers, scars, and paperwork. A battlefield. A home. Both. Ian steps to her side, his presence a quiet anchor amid the chaos. Breathe. He murmurs. Her hands are shaking. We only lit the fuse. Then we see what burns. He says. And what survives. The boardroom looks different with handcuffs on the table. On the screens lining the walls, news channels loop the same footage over and over. Lillian being led into a courthouse in a designer coat and blank expression. Her parents ducking their heads as reporters shout questions. Old images of a much younger Claire at charity events beside her father. The resemblance now eerie and undeniable. This is surreal. Claire murmurs. Welcome to legacy litigation. Nora says, flipping through a thick binder. Where everyone pretends they are shocked gambling is happening in a casino they have been running for years. Across from them, the acting chairman and the remaining board members shuffle papers, whisper, and avoid looking at Claire for more than a second. On the table between them lies a set of folders with the Mason crest embossed on the corner, now more liability than social shield. We have reviewed the evidence. The chairman finally says. He looks 10 years older than he did at the gala. The DNA reports, the financial records, Mr. Hayes' testimony. He swallows. It appears that we have been operating under a grave misapprehension. You mean you let yourselves be conned because it was convenient? Nora says pleasantly. Ian hides a smile behind his hand. Claire does not. This is not helpful. One of the older board members snaps. What would be helpful? Claire says. Is a plan. She leans forward. Competitors are circling. The question is not whether you were fooled. The question is what you do now. A murmur. Reluctant agreement. She does not need their love. She needs their votes. Legally. Nora says. We can petition the court to recognize Ms. Claire as the rightful heir. Given the evidence, it is unlikely anyone will successfully contest that. Ian taps a finger on the table. My family is prepared to back Claire publicly. He says. We hold enough shares to swing any vote. But optics will matter. If this looks like a hostile takeover, the market will punish us even more. A correction. We position this as Forbes Group finally aligning leadership with merit and truth. We announce a reform plan alongside the transition. Cut the dead weight. Return stolen funds. One of the younger board members perks up. We have been begging for that for years. She says. The Masons ignored every audit recommendation they did not like. Because they were the ones the recommendations were aimed at. Nora says. The chairman rubs his temples. It is not simple. Claire says. Her voice softens, just enough to slip past their defenses. It will be painful. Some of you will lose comfortable positions you should not have had. Some of you will be investigated. But I can promise you this: if you work with me now, we can save this company. If you do not, the regulators will do it for us, and you will like their version of mercy much less. Silence stretches. Outside, sirens wail somewhere far below. The city keeps moving, indifferent. What do you propose? Claire slides a document across the table. A phased transition. Effective immediately, I step in as interim CEO under the board's supervision. We announce a forensic audit and a restitution plan, and we start cleaning house. One board member flips through the pages, eyes widening. You already drafted this. I have been drafting this in my head since I was 12. Claire says. I just had to wait until someone would listen. She does not look at him, but she feels her spine straighten. The vote takes an hour. Old loyalties clash with new fear. Some members argue, some storm out, some bargain for reduced roles in exchange for support. Nora occasionally reminds them, sweet as poison, that everything is being recorded. The chairman former chairman now slides the official pen across the table. Congratulations, he says, defeat and relief mingled in his voice. You are in charge of the mess. Claire signs. Her hand does not shake. The desk behind her is larger than her entire studio used to be. The leather chair looks like something a movie villain would swivel in. It suits you, Ian says from the doorway. The view, I mean, not the furniture. She laughs, a short, surprised sound. I keep expecting someone to walk in and tell me to get out of the grown UPS office. You are the grown-up, he says. Unfortunately. She turns to face him. Every time she almost collapsed, Ian was there with coffee, strategy, and the kind of quiet presence that made everything feel slightly less impossible. I did not thank you, she says. Not really. You tried, he says. I told you then and I will tell you now. Then why? He steps closer, every inch of movement deliberate. Because I believe in what you can do with this place, he says. Because the city needs someone at the helm who knows what it feels like to be shut out of these glass towers. And because somewhere between that disastrous first gala and today, I fell in love with the girl who refused to shut up about bad math. Ian. I know, he says quickly, hands lifting in surrender. The timing is terrible. You just got your life back. Your company is in triage. He smiles crookedly. So consider this a standing offer, not a demand. I am here. For you. For this. She searches his face, looking for doubt, for calculation. She finds none. Just stubborn loyalty and a warmth that scares her more than any boardroom battle. You are ridiculous, she says softly. I have been called worse. I cannot promise I know how to do this. Any of it. Running a legacy company. Being somebody's dash. She swallows the word. Girlfriend feels too small for what he is offering. Partner is closer. With you. Relief flickers across his features before he can school it away. Good, he says. Because I already bought a really expensive suit for the wedding we ruined, and it would be a shame to waste it. She laughs again, this time with her whole body. For the first time since she was a child, the future in front of her feels like more than a wall of closed doors. It feels like a path she is choosing, step by step, with someone beside her who is not trying to steal her name. A buzz from her desk breaks the moment. Nora's voice comes over the intercom. Sorry to interrupt the CEO's romantic subplot, she says dryly. But the prosecutors want to brief you on the charges against the Masons. Tell them I will be there in 5. Try not to look too happy walking into the room. Nora adds. Juries like their avenging heirs serious. Ian snorts. She is not wrong. Back to work, Mr. Hart. As you command, Ms. Forbes. The title no longer feels like an accusation or a question. 3 months later, the mansion on the hill does not feel haunted anymore. The media circus has moved on to fresher scandals. The Masons are out on bail, their trial date set. Every week, another headline breaks about someone who helped them skim from Forbes Group's accounts. The city has traded the phrase Forbes imposter for Forbes reform. The portraits on the walls have been rehung, this time with small brass plaques that actually match the names of the people they depict. In the foyer, the old family crest still hangs above the staircase. But now a second, smaller plaque sits beneath it, dedicated to those who chose truth over comfort. Claire stands in the doorway of her father's study, breathing in the scent of old paper and lemon oil. They repainted, but they did not change the layout. The desk by the window still faces the garden, where she used to chase butterflies as a child. You should sit, Arnold says from the armchair by the fireplace. Every time I walk in here, I half expect you to be sprawled on the floor with charts and crayons, arguing with your father about interest rates. Claire smiles. He always let me win. He let you talk yourself into understanding, Arnold says. He looks better than he did at the gala, color back in his cheeks, posture less rigid with pain. Forbes Group's new health plan extended to retired staff, at Claire's insistence. She refused to inherit a company that discarded the people who kept it running. Are you sure you do not want to move into the guest wing? She asks. I like my small apartment, Arnold says. Besides, if I lived here, I would spend all day chasing off reporters and nosy neighbors. This old man prefers his peace. Your peace still includes weekly dinners, she says. Non-negotiable. Your parents would be proud of you, you know, he adds quietly. Not because you took back the company, though they would be pleased about that. Because you refused to become like the people who stole from you. Claire swallows past the lump in her throat. Some days, I wanted to, she admits. But every time I tried to imagine it, I heard my father's voice telling me that if you cheat your numbers, the numbers will cheat you back. Arnold chuckles. He did love saying that. A knock sounds on the open door. Ian leans against the frame, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. Am I interrupting? He asks. Only if you brought bad news. Arnold says. Good news only. Ian replies. The regulators signed off on the last phase of the reform plan. And the shareholders just voted to make Claire's appointment as CEO permanent. Claire blinks. Already. You earned it. He says simply. They know that, even if some of them will never say it out loud. I will leave you young people to your celebrations. He says. Do not make me regret trusting you with my favorite house. You know where I live if we break anything. Claire says. He pats her shoulder on the way out. Try not to. He says, then disappears down the hall, whistling a tune she remembers from childhood car rides. So this is the famous room where baby Claire argued currency policy by drawing smiley faces on napkins. Please never call me baby Claire again, she says, horrified. No promises. He comes to stand beside her at the window. The garden outside glows in the late afternoon sun, the fountain burbling softly over newly scrubbed stone. Or a terrible corporate sculpture. If you install anything that looks like modern art made of rusted metal, I will break up with you, she says. So we are official enough to break up now. He muses. Progress. She bumps her shoulder against his. They fall into a comfortable silence, watching a breeze ripple the trees. For the first time in a long time, Claire lets herself imagine a future that is not driven by crisis. A future with quarterly reports that are just reports, not disaster postmortems. With dinners that do not double as strategy sessions. With laughter in this house again. Speaking of progress, he says. There is one more thing I want to talk to you about. Preferably before Nora storms in demanding you sign another dozen compliance forms. She really has become the third person in this relationship. Claire says. Should I be jealous? He reaches into his pocket. Her breath catches, but what he pulls out is not a ring. It is a small, folded paper. I was going to do the whole kneeling thing. He says. Roses, violins, possibly a rented puppy. Someone who would trip over the puppy and break his nose. She says. Exactly. He opens the paper. Inside is a hand-drawn chart. On one axis, time. 2 lines snake across it. One is labeled My Life Without You. It spikes up and down like a heart monitor during a panic attack. The other, My Life With You, is also chaotic, but the spikes trend upward. At the end of the graph, a point is circled, labeled Us, maybe getting married? Claire stares at it. Laughter bubbles up from somewhere deep. This is the nerdiest proposal I have ever seen. I have a formal speech too, he says quickly. But I figured this would make more sense to you. Her eyes sting. It does, she says. Ian takes a breath, the kind he takes before walking into a hostile room. Claire Forbes, he says. You fought your way back into a life that was stolen from you. You make me want to be less of a shark and more of a person. Will you marry me? Not for the headlines, not for the stock price, just because you want to do this messy, beautiful, risky thing with me. She looks at him, at the stupid chart, at the study that holds so many ghosts. The house creaks softly, settling. For the first time, the thought of staying does not feel like a trap. It feels like coming home. Yes, she says. The word slips out easy, like it has been waiting on her tongue for years. Relief and joy crash over his face like sunlight breaking through clouds. Good. He says, voice a little unsteady. Because I already told my father he has to practice being nice at the wedding. You are asking the impossible. She teases. We specialize in that. He says. It is not cinematic, no fireworks, no perfect lighting, just 2 people who have been through hell, and are still choosing each other anyway. To Claire it feels like everything. When they pull apart, she rests her forehead against his. We are going to make so many people angry, she says. Good. He replies. We will fix those too. Later, they wander through the house together, planning which rooms will become offices, which will stay private, where they will put a real coffee machine to replace the awful one in the boardroom. Ian insists on a game room somewhere. Claire insists on a library with beanbags for visiting kids from the foundation programs. As the sun sinks, casting the city in gold, Claire steps out onto the front steps. No guards blocking the path, no reporters clustered like vultures. Just a road that leads down into a city she now faces on her own terms. She takes Ian's hand. Ready? She asks. For whatever comes next. She says. Angry shareholders, revenge plots from jail, the board arguing about holiday bonuses. All of it. He squeezes her fingers. With you. Always. The wind picks up, tugging at her hair. Somewhere in the garden, a fountain laughs quietly. Claire lifts her chin, eyes on the skyline. Once, she was a girl standing outside these gates, begging to be let in. Now, she is the one who decides which gates stay open and which slam shut. The imposter's stolen crown is gone. In its place is something better and heavier: responsibility, chosen and earned. Claire steps forward, down the stairs, out into the future that waited for her to claim it. This time, she is not running after her life. Together with the man who saw her for who she was long before the world did, and with the people who chose truth over comfort. The real heiress has come home, and she is just getting started.
Thanks for watching. Follow for more romance stories.